Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Cabinet on the 19th of October 2023. Can I just check that colleagues online can hear us okay? Yeah, okay, great. Firstly, then I'll take apologies for absence. Are there any for today's meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Cyril Anderson.
Okay, any other apologies for today? No, okay, we'll move to disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest for any items on the agenda. I'll take interest then. Councillor King first, please.
Thank you, Leader. Personal and prejudicial interest in item 9 because I'm named in the report as an appointment to Governor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, can I take some advice, please, from the legal officer? Item 9, we've got a ward colleague named in the report. Would that be personal interest only? Yes, because there's no, I'm assuming, personal connection as such. It's a professional relationship, but more. So that's fine, personal only.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, item 9, member of the local authority given appointments panel. I've got dispensation to stay but not vote.
Okay, and I will record the same personal interest as Councillor Lewis. Councillor Francis Davis? Yes.
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other interests from officers or members? No? Okay. Move to the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 6. I've not had any requests for any amendments, so I'm happy to move them as a true record. Second, all those in favour, if you could show. Thank you very much. That's agreed. Announcements of Leader of the Council. I have no formal announcements for today. We move on to public question time. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask a question this morning on any items on the agenda? No. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to councillor question time then. Are there any councillors present who would like to ask any questions? I don't think there are. No. And then with Cabinet's agreement, I intend to make some slight changes to the running order for today. If Cabinet are content, they intend to call in Councillor Black next to give us his pre-decision scrutiny feedback, and then we will take item 10 before item 7 in the agenda. Is that correct? Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for moving this agenda item forward. It's appreciated. The Scrutiny Programme Committee considered the report in front of you, and we have written to you, and you should all have a copy of the letter, so I'm not going to read the letter. I'll just make 2 or 3 points. First of all, in terms of the contingency budget, I think the committee considered this was a prudent decision to keep the £500,000 intact and have it therefore covering any unknown costs of changes and additional costs in relation to Oracle licensing. But we do have concerns about the project costs. We understand, of course, there's about £6 million of that is down to COVID and the fact that staff had to be transferred to other duties, which delayed the implementation significantly. But there is, of course, still an increase of about 2.3 million, which we all understand that IT projects do, of course, overrun and do cost more often than they're intended to. I think the only concern we had, well, the main concern we have was with possible ongoing costs. We note that there will be further changes being anticipated in relation to transformation and improving business processes and operational efficiency, and in particular around new licenses or changes to licensing regime. So we just wanted to sound that note of caution that it seemed to us that although you have the £500,000 and officers seem confident that will cover in the current year, that there may well be costs in forthcoming budgets which will need to be accounted for, and we did have some concerns about that. But that basically is a summary of what the committee felt was needed to be highlighted with the Cabinet. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Black, and can I thank you and the scrutiny members for the scrutiny session, which I attended along with Councillor Lewis and officers earlier this week. My error, it was actually item 12 that we're bringing forward, not item 10. Otherwise, it would not have been connected to the scrutiny review. So I'll hand over to Councillor Lewis now to take us through item 12.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Black and the committee for the scrutiny process that we went through this week. It is always welcomed, particularly when it comes to sums of this magnitude that we are investing in our organisation. As I said at scrutiny, I'm very, very pleased to report that Oracle Fusion System went live as promised in April and on budget as well. It's not to be underestimated the size and scale of the system. 13 modules have been delivered covering HCM, supply chain management and payroll. And again, I want to place on record for Cabinet's benefit my thanks to Ness, Sarah and the in-house digital team who've worked closely with department leads across the council and also our partners Oracle, Soctim and Infosys to deliver this major project. The system is stable and working well. However, there have been some integration issues since go live in April, most of them related to how Fusion links with other systems. Most of these integration issues are now largely resolved, and I'm pleased to report that only one issue is left, which is going live in early November. This issue connects to iConnect, which links Fusion into the pension system. There were key drivers for implementing the Oracle Fusion system, and that was around mitigating the risk of the old system, which was becoming end of life, and also improving security and resilience, which have all been achieved. We've remained in hypercare until the critical issues are resolved. Once the final integration is fixed shortly, we will then transition into the new Oracle operating model, and we will close the project. The previous project board will be replaced by the new Fusion Change Board to oversee changes to the system or new developments. And in response to the Scrutiny Committee's concerns around spiralling costs in terms of licenses and change requests, the Fusion Change Board will be monitoring those extremely closely. And therefore, it is prudent that we transfer the 500,000 contingency into a earmarked reserve, and we can draw down on that reserve as and when we need to. This is about modernising our back office services, improving e-learning and making the systems more efficient. And those efficiencies already recognised have been seen and are as read in the report. So to conclude, I'm really pleased to say the project's been delivered on time and within the approved budget extensions. And I'm very happy to move the recommendations on page 182 and also to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lewis, and can I thank you, Ness Young, Sarah Corkin and the team for, or Sarah Lackenby, sorry, and the team for the work that they've done to ensure that this project is delivered. Again, as I said at scrutiny, I think people can easily forget how difficult a situation the IT services were placed in as part of what we all faced during the COVID pandemic, because this a transition and a migration of this scale and complexity would be difficult in normal running times. But when you were facing a global pandemic where many of your partners and technical resources are also facing isolation or the inability to access in a way that they would normally do and work together in the way that they normally would do, then inevitably you end up picking up additional time implications. And as I think you explained at the scrutiny meeting, those are directly linked to the fact that we had to keep systems running for longer, and then we had to lengthen the programme to account for the inability to work on this migration during the COVID pandemic. Again, when you strip out the COVID impacts, then you largely get back to a budget line which is consistent with our original aspirations. And I think, you know, as you've said, there are many examples of IT projects going significantly over budget. Indeed, you could look back to this own authority when it tried to deliver service at Swansea, £80 million invested to deliver £26 million of savings and not a penny saved. So I think the authorities changed the way in which it approaches IT projects. It's in-housed, its technical resources to a large degree, and therefore is well placed to take forward those change requests and enhancements that the 500,000 will fund going forward. So again, thanks to you and the team for all of that. I'm very happy to second the report. Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Lewis? Yes. No. Okay. With that, then, if we can launch the vote. If you can't vote electronically, just raise your physical hand.
Has everybody else had it electronically? Yeah, you have had it electronically. Okay, so let me just take verbal.
Okay, let's do a physical vote then. If you can all raise your hand if you're in favour of the report. Lovely, thanks very much. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Councillor Black, for the work you and the Scrutiny Committee have done.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to item 7, which is the Nature Recovery Action Plan for Swansea. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Ada. Today, the purpose of this report is quite clear. What we're asking Cabinet to do to endorse the local nature recovery plan. Could I say this has been probably out for consultation, working with partners more than any other document. I think we've gone out there, we've worked with many groups to get this final version. Before us today, what you will see, this falls in line with this plan actually looks at the delivery mechanisms, particularly to nature emergency, and meets the 6 objectives of nature recovery on Wales and local level. I think it is a very good document. I think the document we got before us today has been before our Transformation Committee, and I would like to put on thanks my record, particularly to Rebecca Fogarty, particularly because the hard work that she's put into this in her committee, where they've scrutinised it, they've amended it, and this is now the final document that I would say that our partners have all endorsed. This isn't the last of this, because what we will be doing out of the 6 priorities, we will be bringing further reports back to this, back to Cabinet to make sure that we actually scrutinise the success of this. So, got nothing to add to the report, but again, put my thanks to Rebecca and also Deb Hill's team for bringing this before us today. More than happy to move the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And thanks to Councillor Hopkins and his team for pulling together this report. It demonstrates our progress on fulfilling our pledge to nature after we declared a climate emergency and climate and nature emergency. And I want to echo Councillor Hopkins's comments, and I commend the team for providing such a superb appendix along with the report. I was delighted to see the wonderful community farm in Cocket featured in the report, as well as several other remarkable local nature and biodiversity projects. I know I've said it before, but farming has many benefits for well-being, from the physical activity that keeps you fit to the peaceful time you have to appreciate the nature around you. At the community farm, their animals and allotments are cared for by volunteers of all ages and abilities. Working at the farm, it helps them restore their confidence, acquire new skills, cultivate interests in growing food and looking after the animals and their environment. And it's impressive to see that the only city farm in Wales is here in Swansea. I was pleased to see the inclusion of the positive effects of ruminants, cattle and sheep, to perhaps everyone else, have on biodiversity, and they actually have a vital role in food system in Wales. As most of our land is marginable and suitable for sustainable grazing systems. They turn grass into high quality proteins and support native wildflowers, improving soil health and fertility. Even though the report focuses on what we are doing in terms of our nature recovery action plan, everyone has a role to play. There are already many excellent things happening on farms across Swansea and Wales. On my own farm, for example, we have some of the species mentioned in the report, such as barn owls and tawny owls, red kites, buzzards, and much more. I was glad to see the references to food waste in the report. Food waste is a major cause of climate change, as about a third of the world's food goes to waste. Generating, transporting, and letting that food rot continues to almost 10% of global emissions. And the point on if food were a country, it'd have the third largest carbon footprint actually stuck with me. So there's some outstanding initiatives in Swansea, such as Cyfoeth Coed, that aim to reduce food waste by collecting unwanted fruit and veg and delivering them to places like Matthew's house or the community fridge. I had the pleasure of meeting them not so long ago when they came to collect some excess fruit and veg in my farm, and it's great to see initiatives such as this exist in Swansea. So even though it was not mentioned specifically in the report, our rural development team are actually doing some fantastic work supporting various organisations across the county with grant funding to help them enhance biodiversity and enhance nature. So I'm more than happy to support the report.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. You second in the report, then I assume. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councillor Gibbard.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councillor Hopkins and the nature team because it was such a really interesting and lovely report, like, you know, visually interesting report as well, and it's got some very concerning statistics in there, you know, on the page about declining nature in terms of our loss of habitats and declining in our butterfly species and things like that. But it was so lovely to see the focus on all the variety of habitats and biodiversity that we have around Swansea and Gower, and, you know, we should be really proud of that and the work that is going on in community groups, as Councillor Stevens has just said, for example, with the community farm, Orchard Project, Clyne Valley Community Project, and all the little sort of friends groups around. So yeah, really interesting report. I really hope this gets some wider coverage and is shared widely.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbard. Councillor Francis Davis.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with the report that's come forward, and I'm really pleased to hear about the community farm. I remember the Leisure Department introduced this over 25 years ago, making sure that people living in urban areas have access to rural life. And you know, it was the only urban farm in Wales. When we look back that time, you know, to think that despite all the problems that have arisen with budgets, with COVID, that it's still going there. And it is a great asset to Swansea, and especially to children living in urban areas to be able to visit that farm. So I'm really pleased with the report.
Yeah, I concur with the comments from the Cabinet members. I think it's an excellent report, and again, will contribute again to our commitments to net zero and our activities to make sure that we protect the environment for future generations. So very pleased with the report. So apologies, Councillor Anderson. Anthony, apologies.
That's okay. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I would like to thank everyone for this report, and Councillor Gibbard picked up on the sort of easiness of it. To be able to read is very pictorial as well, and I just, you know, as a ward member who has a nature reserve, you know, in my ward, I just wonder whether this could go out and perhaps go to schools and go to families to take home, because I know that even people that live close by don't even know what's on their doorstep. And when you look at this, it's so easy to read, and you can see right across Swansea all the fabulous you know, different elements that we have, and all. And as someone who's been laid up for a long time this year and have become a sort of avid bird watcher, you know, it's just, honestly, it's just fabulous to see all this. And I wish more reports were written like this. They'd be far more interesting. But I do wonder if we could really sort of make this well-known, Leader, you know, and really sort of get it out there, because I think lots and lots of people would be interested in reading this, and schools could play a part in children taking this home for parents as well. So yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone who put all this effort into this, because it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Anthony. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Andy, particularly on that point about it's everybody's responsibility, and it is everybody's responsibility, and this will be going out to our schools, particularly working, and that's what it's about, being as easy to read as it possibly can, to make sure that everybody can understand it. And I think that's exactly the role of our STC. When they looked at it, they ensured that it was that easy read, it's deliverable, and it's being able to monitor it as well. And I think that's the important part, particularly with our 6 priorities within it. So I can give some assurances, yes, it will be rolled out throughout our schools as well.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And on that specific point, I mean, we've been talking about the opportunities that Curriculum for Wales gives to our schools and to our learners. And I think this is something that's going to be an approach that's going to be of great assistance. I mean, it's a great opportunity. I know there's some excellent practice in Swansea schools already, and it's a matter now of building on that. And I think, as Councillor Anthony has said, the more we disseminate this report and make sure that it doesn't lie on a shelf gathering dust, but that there are actions taken forward, I think, and I certainly am also impressed by its contents, Leader.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. All right, the report has been moved and seconded. So I'll ask you all if you could vote physically in terms of raising your hand if you're in favour of the report, please. Thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. We'll move on to agenda item 8 then, which is the Swansea Destination Management Plan for 23-28. Councillor Francis Davis.
Thought you were taking 10 first, you said. Huh?
No, we took 12 first.
On the destination management plan, you can see in the introduction, and might well ask, what is a destination management plan? Well, that is described on page 94. It's best described as the process of leading, influencing and coordinating the management of all of the aspects of a destination that contribute to a quality visitor experience, taking account of the needs of visitors, local residents, businesses, and the environment. And that's how it's described by visitbritain.org. If you look at page 96, you will see the pillars there that how we've come to this. The priorities are driving quality, breaking the seasonality, encouraging sustainability, and working in partnerships. On the column 2, you see the actions that we are taking and that's described in the plan to protect and enhance our natural environment, develop high quality tourism product, and to improve the visitor experience, continue to deliver targeted marketing campaigns, improve infrastructure and facilities, develop strong partnerships between public, private and the third sector, and identify relevant funding and attract further investments. You can see the impacts then on the third column and the outcomes that this will deliver of a distinctive high quality visitor experience, a stronger tourism offer, a more sustainable approach to tourism, both economically and environmentally, and growth and prosperity for the local economy. Paragraph 2.3 shows you the bigger picture and what Swansea, and I think we can really be proud in Swansea of our track record over the last few years. You know, considering we've gone through COVID, all the austerity budgets that we as a local authority have had to face with of lack of finance. But when we look at the completed projects on the Swansea Arena and the Copper Bay, the Amy Dillwyn Coastal Park above the car park alongside, the landmark bridge, which some people love, some people hated, the Taco Bridge or Crunchy Bridge or whatever we call it. Great to see it winning an award recently. The £3 million improvement on top of what had already been invested in Wine Street into a greener and more family-friendly hospitality and leisure destination. The redesign of the Kingsway with more public open spaces and better pedestrian and cycle routes. And the opening that we saw of the Penderyn Swansea Copper Works on the much revived Yorkshire Imperial Metal sites. On top of that, obviously, it shows on what's in development, the public sector hub in Oxford Street, Astorfa, the refurbishment of the Palace Theatre and Albert Hall, the enhancement of Castle Square and the Swansea Amphitheatre, new entrances into Swansea Market, which is much loved by residents and visitors alike, and the Quadrant Shopping Centre, and the new high-tech office development on 71-72. The Harvard Copper Works, as I mentioned earlier, is being transformed into a leisure destination with new outdoor attractions, skyline planned for 2025, and the floating pontoons to take advantage using levelling up money for pontoons and getting river taxis back onto the River Tower. Partnership with the private sector, as is being developed with Urban Splash for the mixed-use transformation of the Civic Centre and the former St David's Shopping Centre. Major hotel developments in the reports shows that the Collier's report identified that Swansea can take on 3 more hotels, and I know we are working very hard to deliver these hotels to Swansea. The extra events that we are putting on with Ironman, the Air Show, the World Triathlon Para Series, the Swansea Bay 10K, the headline concerts we've all seen in Singleton Park. Those visitors bring a lot of income into Swansea. And when you look at on page 98, the value of tourism to Swansea, and this is 2022, was brought in 4.2 million visitors, 1.5 million visitors staying, an economic impact of 510 million, creating 5.2 thousand jobs in the tourism industry. So it's a really good report. If you look at on page 104, some of the adverts that our marketing team within the Culture Department and Tourism Department, Walking in Dragons was one, Swansea's Happy Place, talking about Dylan Thomas, the voice of the valleys. There's a lot of advertising gone out there in London and in the Midlands area where we attract most of our tourists from. All this adds up to making Swansea a world-class destination. It was only yesterday, Leader, that we were talking to the chairman of Swansea City Football Club, who was waxing lyrical about how beautiful Swansea was. He said he'd come here with his family and his children, and he said, you know, this place is the best place I've ever visited, and we need to push it more. Well, you know, it costs money to push more, but the budgets we're using is doing an excellent job in what they do. So I have pleasure in moving this destination management plan, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Councillor King.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd really like to welcome this report. I think it, I think like the previous report, Run the Nature Recovery, I think it highlights some absolutely fantastic work going on in the city to bring that tourism destination. I just wanted to highlight briefly some of the contribution of that to that biocultural venues. And venues like the Glyn Vivian Art Gallery and Swansea Museum continue to deliver really high quality, world-class exhibitions. We recently had, well, in fact, it's still there, the His Dark Materials exhibition in the Glyn Vivian, which I know has been extremely popular and brought people from all over the country to visit that, as well as the exhibits in the museum being refreshed and reordered. And obviously we also have a great venue in the Brangwyn Hall, which continues also to deliver a great programme of a mixture of different types of events. I also think we're very lucky to have a very skilled events team in Swansea, and I always pay tribute to them in the way they work and are able to deliver some incredible events that I know are very popular in the region. So I'm happy to second the report, Leader. I think it's really, really great to read. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Hopkin.
Yeah, Leader, all I want to say is to congratulate Robert Francis Davis for his drive. I'll be honest, his ambition, his drive is where we are today, particularly with things like the levelling up fund, where I know that he's targeted where the way forward, particularly looking at the river taxis and the river corridor. For many years, we've turned our back where other cities have made the most of river corridors. It's nice to see we're now reinvesting and looking at our heritage, particularly in the copper works. And I really am proud of the work that's going on within this city, and I think it is a fantastic effort, particularly from yourself, the Leader, and Councillor Robert Francis Davis in this destination plan. Wherever you go in the world and you mention Swansea, people always relate us to Cardiff and compare to Cardiff. We've got some fantastic facilities here in Swansea, and market them is always difficult, particularly with the financial pressures we press. But it is important. We haven't got the industries that we used to have in this city. So tourism is going to play a huge part for employment going forward. And I would like to put my thanks to yourself and Robert Francis Davis for the hard work that they're doing to deliver these projects. So well done all.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins, and again, I'll add my thanks for the work that Councillor Francis Davis, Councillor King and others are doing to take this forward. I think, the numbers don't lie, and we've got to remember that this comes on the back of us having significant impact from the Brexit deal that was done. Restricting people's ability to travel. Then we had the COVID pandemic on top of that. Then we've had the cost of living on top of that. All of those are things that make tourism and destination management a much harder job. But we've stuck the course. The Councillor Francis Davis went through the list of things that are already being delivered, but there is more to come. And this is the first time that the economy in this area for tourism has breached £500 million. And that, remember, is not £500 million for the local authority or the council. It's £500 million to people running businesses in the city, the hoteliers, the people running the ice cream parlours, the people running the restaurants, the people running the hotels, the people driving taxis. That is where that £500 million ends up. It's in the jobs and the pockets of the people who work in our economy locally. And again, I'm very proud that we've got a really ambitious programme. People will see Castle Gardens starting work early next year. People will see the pontoons going on the river corridor, allowing river taxis to run. People will see delivery of the metro system, enhancing our metro, and that is now at an advanced stage. We know that the New Zealand company Skyline have their proposals to bring a world-class facility to Kilvey Hill, and then there are other developments, including the second phase of Copper Bay and the delivery of significant amount of jobs into the city centre and surrounding areas. All of this is to help Swansea be successful and to reach its potential. So very, very grateful for the work that's being done. It's absolutely necessary now more than ever, because we could have been in the position that many other cities find themselves in, which is coming out of COVID without the ability, without a plan, without the delivery record, and without things happening on the ground. And that's not the position we're in. So very, very grateful for that. So, Councillor Francis Davis.
One thing that I didn't add was my thanks to the very small department, but the survey was the biggest survey they've ever carried out, over 1,000 face-to-face interviews. We had responses from the trade of over 102 responses, which is a big sample. And they are all confident, having come out of COVID, where the hospitality industry has, nationally and globally has been hit, with a lot of confidence for the future. So, and I think that is down to the work that we've carried out and the ambitious plans of transforming Swansea into a world-class destination.
And again, the one thing I did forget, of course, Mr. Nichols has been continuing to lead the work as well on the revised lagoon proposal, and there will be announcements on that in November, which I'm sure will be met with excitement across our region. So again, we will look forward to that. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we'll go to the vote again. Let's do the physical votes. All those in favour? Okay, thank you very much. That is carried. So thank you, colleagues. We'll move on to item 9, which is the local authority governor appointments. We'll just pause a second to allow Councillor King to leave the room.
Thank you, Leader.
Hey, Councillor Smith.
Great pleasure to move the report and thank the people that have volunteered as school governors. Let's remember, these are all volunteers who undertake an onerous responsibility, and happy to move the report, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Very happy to second. Colleagues, any questions or comments for Councillor Smith? If not, can we ask to show if you're in favour of the report, please? Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, we'll just wait 2 seconds for Councillor King to come back in. Okay, thank you. Okay, colleagues, we'll now go to agenda item 10, which is the disposal of sporting and leisure facilities under the Community Asset Transfer Policy. Councillor Francis Davis.
Thank you, Leader. This is to approve in principle the transfer of assets of sporting and leisure facilities, including more broadly any recreational land and associated buildings to community organisations, clubs, associations in accordance with the council's community asset transfer policy at less than best value in order to enable this investment, improvement and long-term sustainability. You see that there on page 147, paragraph 2.4, the table, there are 3 applications basically before us. It is the one at Mynydd Newydd playing fields where Penlan Football Club want to take advantage of grants that are being offered by the Welsh FA. This will enable them to do that. They are moving the pitch to alongside the changing rooms. I think this will be great for the northern part of Swansea in the Penderry ward. Penlan, a well-established football club, a very good football club, and let's hope that they can make further progress through the leagues and represent in that area. On plot 2, it says here is the Coed Gwilym Park, Pontardawe Road in Clydach. It's a long leasehold disposal to the Friends of Coed Gwilym Park to continue to develop and improve football facility. A similar story. This would be Clydach Football Club working with the Friends of Coed Gwilym Park. We're doing a great job up there, and I would encourage support of this. Then on 3 is the Pentilla Playing Fields in Pentilla Road in Cocket. A long leasehold disposal to Rose Hill Community Football Club to enable the continuation, development and improvement of the football facilities at this property. Where would we be in Swansea if it wasn't for the volunteers that actually encourage people to participate in sport? You know, they're the greatest asset in our community are these groups that on a weekly basis, they are getting hundreds of children, and in particular, I'm referring perhaps here to the Rose Hill Community Football Club, very young ages. We saw in the paper the other day about Town Hill being a deprived ward. Well, one thing's for certain to me, the community isn't deprived up there. I go to the Phoenix Centre and look at the facilities that are there, going from strength to strength with that community. What Rose Hill Community Football Club are doing in this particular area is getting hundreds of children participating in sport, and that is keeping the health and well-being of that community together. There's other good clubs up there, and some of our best footballers in Swansea have always come from that area. So I would support this, Leader. Now, there's 3 recommendations. The recommendation to approve in principle the proposed transfer of the plots listed on 2.4, and those what I just read out. 2, it delegates authority to the director of place to grant long leases for appropriate duration in line with the principles set out in paragraph 2.3 in relation to the plots listed on 2.4. Table 1 to the proposed leaseholders for the intended reasons as indicated in the table, providing that the head of property services has considered each of the proposed transfers under the council's land transaction procedure rules and recommends approval of each transfer. The lease is to be granted at less than best consideration in accordance with the council's community asset transfer policy. And then 3, delegates authority to the relevant director in consultation with the head of property services and the cabinet member to determine the appropriate reporting route to fully consider any objections received through the open space disposal notice in line with section 6 of this report. And 4, delegates authority to the head of property services to negotiate and settle the terms of the proposed leases, and thereafter any required deeds of variation and authority is delegated to the chief legal officer to finalise and enter into the legal documentation necessary to protect the council's interest. I know some people get worried about disposal of public open spaces. On the one in Pentilla Fields, for instance, it's the entire field. This will still be open to the community up in Town Hill. They have access into it. but at the same time taking advantage of any grants that community group can actually bring in to improve and enhance that facility there. So there's no big fence going up around it. There will be unfettered access to the public as before. So I have great pleasure in moving these recommendations, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davies. I'm going to bring Councillor Hopkins into second, and then I'm going to bring Debbie Smith in as the Chief Legal Officer just to give us some further information. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I certainly would take some pride in seconding this recommendation to us today. What I would say, the three teams are very deserved here of taking this, of taking the opportunity, particularly with the FA, of getting grants and perhaps from lottery funds that we couldn't access. And I, as I said, did take some pride in second this, because particularly with Rose Hill and the work they do with some of our disabled children, autistic football team and a blind football team. I believe it's the only blind football team in Wales, or it was when it originally set up. But the work that they carry out within the community is second to none. It's not just about football. It's about the well-being. It's about poverty, and it's about working with the community. And as Councillor Robert Francis Davies said, there are some concerns from some people about lack of open space. This is not about lack of open space. It's about enhancing and making sure the better facilities that will be put within that area. So from me, it is a great, exciting moment. So I know that these people are passionate about what they deliver, and I think it's a great opportunity to see that particular football team. And not just that one, but the three in front of us today, I'm sure we'll do some fantastic work in taking this forward. Something that we probably are not good at doing in accessing some of them grants, or not able to access them, sorry. So happy to second.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I think that one of the key drivers within this is that the club will then have access to be able to apply for grants and to secure investment that the council is unable to access. And that's opening up opportunities for communities, as both of you have said. I'll go to Ms. Smith next, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just to highlight that public open space notices have been published in accordance with the legislation in respect of all three sites. Now, the consultation for those notices closed on the 10th of October, and I understand those responses have been collated and have been considered by officers. They're not, because of the lack of time, they haven't been presented to council today, to cabinet today to look at. So, but I understand they are available and they've been shared on a limited basis with some of the cabinet members. So the recommendations are quite clear. The cabinet will be making a decision in principle today in relation to the disposals. The recommendation 3 states that authority will be delegated to the relevant director in consultation with the head of property services and the cabinet member, who I think have already looked at those consultation responses and looked at them in some detail. But the decision in relation to looking at the detail of the notices, the responses to the notices, any objections, weighing up those advantages of the use of the open space and the loss of the open space, all those will be considered on a delegated basis in line with recommendation 3. So it's just a decision in principle today from Cabinet.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith, for that clarification, because that is the basis on which the report was written, and therefore it doesn't change anything in the report, but it is a very helpful clarification. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to say that Councillor Francis Davies is absolutely spot on. In fact, that sport plays a huge role in our communities, from health and well-being, reducing antisocial behaviour, teaching discipline, and actually cultivating the next sporting stars. So we have many outstanding football, rugby, and many other clubs right across the county, and I'm just happy that we can play a part in enabling these clubs to flourish.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Any other cabinet member wish to comment? If not, the report's been moved and seconded. And again, I could ask you to vote physically if you're in favour, please. Okay, thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. We'll move then to item 11, sorry, which is the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring First Quarter Update 23-24. And I'll bring Chief Finance Officer Mr. Smith in first, please.
Thank you, Chair. First quarter monitoring report is in front of you, and in terms of treading a well-worn path for a first quarter report, it will come as no surprise that I am reporting a forecast overspend And frankly, I would be staggered if there wasn't one, given the real pressures that every authority in the whole of the UK is under and well documented and reported on. You have 4 recommendations, and I'll come back to you at the end, Chair, as the relevant cabinet member, to give you advice to seek to move all 4. They're in line with normal recommendations in recent years, where we're having to take in-year mitigating actions to offset pressures that have emerged or continue to emerge, especially given a number of uncertainties that continue to abound. I will, as ever, only draw your attention to specific pertinent matters that I feel you need to be mindful of. I start with 1.4, which notes that this report is 1 month later than normal, but that is linked to the Oracle implementation. And you've heard reasons on that, but it is testimony to the advice you've had earlier that, notwithstanding the major implementation, we're only 1 month behind on the reporting schedule. And I am satisfied that the usual degree of robustness in our finance reporting methods and reporting through to Cabinet is working well. I would also draw your attention to section 1.1.5, which reiterates what I said at the beginning. There are many authorities in grave difficulty across the UK, and there are a number of pressures to be weighed. I think it is obvious that the single biggest risk and pressure we face at the moment is the inherent uncertainty over pay, not only past pay, but present pay and future pay, given the local government pay award has not been settled. The teachers' pay award is out to consultation, and there is great interest as to who is paying for what in terms of funding deals and promises made by various parties. So it is that one that you've got to weigh in mind, that even at this late stage, we're into already the second half of the year, I don't actually know any of the big items that are your biggest components of spend in the current year. That is important when you are weighing future budget decisions. Section 2.3 summarises the gross position, and I emphasise gross position because I will be taking you through some mitigations in due course. It is basically a tale of services at the moment, gross £13 million overspent. When I go through the report, you'll see it's down to about £9 million. A tale of 2 directorates currently underspent, the small ones. The other 3 approximately net £3 million each, because the Place Directorate will receive a material release from the inflation provided for centrally, given the substantial increases in energy bills, and you had a mitigation strategy to provide a one-off energy fund when you set the budget as a council earlier this year. I would draw your attention to the contingency fund, section 3.2 table. You did budget for an increased contingency fund, and you made a number of commitments when the budget was set about some draws, and there have been some relatively modest draws in year. And I always score some individual items when you've made decisions of Cabinet in the current year against that. You will see I have held back just under £3.5 million for some of those risks around all pay costs. But if I hold that back, effectively it means the sum is committed, but we don't know whether those pay costs will yet need to be used. I emphasise that because you have other items on the agenda later where you'll be considering committing to spending more money one-off, but I must draw your attention at the moment to, I anticipate that the contingency fund is spent, but only spent on the basis of anticipated risks. If those risks don't materialise, then of course it's a course within your gift to decide to release sums in terms of policy decisions, which will come on to one of the later items. I do emphasise at the end of 3.2 in bold, these are one-off mitigations. You find me an authority in the land that isn't doing one-off mitigations to try and manage the process, but it is right that I draw your attention to the building pressures in future years. In similar vein, I draw your attention to the table in 4.3, which is our inflation provision. Again, this one's just over £3.5 million. The other one was just under £3.5 million held back at the moment, again for carrying against those risks I've highlighted. But it is worth noting that you budgeted, albeit on a one-off basis, with a very, very substantial central inflation provision. That won't be there at the start of next year because you took a decision as a council to draw heavily from reserves, ostensibly releases for the Economic Recovery Fund, but in this table for that up to £15 million energy fund for use for schools, which has already been fully deployed, for Place as the corporate energy landlord, which is the item I'll refer to in a moment, which brings down the net overspend position, and for a number of partners. So that sets out there's another £3.5 million currently there available. Section 5 sets out and reminds that we've reintroduced the savings tracker, and the first cut of the savings tracker indicates that we are on target for about 70% of all of the savings proposed set. That will be continued to be reviewed and revised, but that seems to me to be a reasonable starting position for first quarter. Section 6 pulls it together as a summary and indicates that net, I believe, services are about £9 million overspent. And as I say, that effectively falls between the three big spending departments in broadly equal proportion. If you are minded to move the recommendation, then you will be tasking directors with taking in-year actions to balance that back. Past history suggests that directors have done that, and I'm sure you'll join me in putting the pressure on, but recognising how difficult the pressures are for spending directorates when they're managing a multitude of risks. I draw your attention to the bullet point B in 6.1b. We are in a very fortunate position still, short term, compared to many other authorities and even the UK government. At national level, there are concerns that the cost of borrowing is going up, which means there's less money for day-to-day spending. Because we had a fundamentally different strategy, we borrowed long and cheap before all of those interest rate rises kicked in. So I'm declaring at first quarter a minimum £5 million a year underspend on capital financing. Doesn't last for forever, but that is a very helpful in-year windfall. We've had it now for several years, and the only likelihood is that will increase, which will help with your mitigations going through the rest of this year. Section 7 summarises the capital budget, and the capital budget was deliberately closed a month earlier. So this one we didn't push to the end of July. It was only June. We do tend to cut off quite early. It does miss an awful lot of the spending, which means it does always look relatively low. It is especially low, and there may be comment on that. From my point of view as your treasurer, I'm always happy to not get the checkbook out and spend money because it helps drive that high above the line item in terms of capital financing. But I know you will be concerned as our directors to ensure that the capital plans you set out are delivered as rapidly as possible to deliver on the promises you've made. Section 8 highlights the housing revenue account, and I normally just skip over this one in terms of it's ultra ring fence, so it has to look after itself. That remains the case, but the relevant cabinet member may wish to draw attention to issues there where there are some pressures on the housing revenue account, all perfectly manageable within normal year, but there are pressures building there. It's a long report. I'm not going to win any prizes for it looking pretty or being intelligible to anyone outside, but that's the nature of the boring finances. But given current reporting, it's a thing that media are interested in. So I draw your attention finally to Appendix A, which puts it on a single page, boils it down, shows you that gross directorate overspend of about £13.5 million, identifies the sums that are available to mitigate that centrally from contingency fund and the enhanced inflation provision. And I've been quite prudent in terms of making an assumption of holding money back for the pay offer. That may or may not come to pass in terms of any increase beyond what we'd already budgeted. And we are again in a fortunate position. We budgeted for the current only pay offer on the table, albeit the national sides have not yet agreed that pay offer for this current year. So if it doesn't come to pass, you will have some wiggle room. And that's why you have an item later on the agenda to consider what to do in terms of the parking offer, declaring that £5 million underspend on net interest charges. And as I say, I expect that to improve come second quarter. It does mean when I draw your attention to the earmarked reserves line, the final position is a little bit overspent. That £9 million overspend mitigated by £5 million from interest, net interest takes you down to below 4 million. And at the moment, my proposal is it would be drawn from earmarked reserves. It does mean it's a big draw from earmarked reserves, but you crucially as a council planned to make a big draw from earmarked reserves for the Energy Fund and the Economic Recovery Fund. So it's perhaps not that surprising. And at this point in time, at the end of the page, it balances to naught. You have a legally balanced budget at this point in time, as you are required to do. The rest of the report sets out the director's comments on variations. I do anticipate that when we get to second quarter, which will come to Cabinet in December, you are likely to have seen a major raft of announcements at UK level and some indications from Welsh Government over the availability of funding in year and possibly steps in terms of what may be moving and coming forward for next year. And I do expect to be able to materially update the position in terms of the overall pay risks, both past, present and future. It's a long intro from me, but I think it's important because it's an area of big pressure for all councils at the moment, but it is otherwise not that surprising compared to a normal first quarter when everyone is clearly suffering and under the cosh in terms of the stresses on public finances. So I would remind you when I hand back to you now, Chair, that there are 4 recommendations in front of you. My officer advice would be that you move all 4 of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you for the technical run through of which is often a dry subject, but you do an excellent job making it not as dry as many of your peers. So thank you very much for that. The 4 recommendations there, I will formally move, but I wanted to make a few comments if I can. As you alluded to, It's not unusual at this time in the year for us to see a projected overspend position, but absolutely we have been successful every year working together with officers to ensure that we bring down those overspends every year to a point where we have a balanced budget or better. And that is something, again, that we will seek to do this year. Cabinet are already looking at actions that can be deployed in order to balance the budget, but much will depend, as you said, in terms of decisions made in London in November and Cardiff in December, because the reality of the way in which local government financing works is if the government in London turns off the tap and says no money, then everybody else gets thirsty, basically, because we don't get anything coming down the pipe. So it does rest now with the UK government to make sure that they provide a budget which addresses the issues in social care, which addresses the issues in education, and which ensures that they fund properly the pay awards for public sector workers and allow the Welsh Government in Cardiff then to have the resources to be able to deploy into health, into local government and into other essential services. And the reality is, if the government in London does not do that, then it is left for local authorities across the country to look to the local taxpayer to fill that gap. That has always been an unfair position, because decisions in London often look detached from decisions locally, but it is clearly sitting with UK government in November to make sure they provide enough money for councils across the UK, including Swansea. As you said, Mr. Smith, we are better provisioned than most and better prepared than most to deal with the financial issues. There are a number of councils, big councils in England, that have either served for bankruptcy or are looking at bankruptcy. We are not in that position. We are simply not in that position. But that doesn't mean that we're immune from pressures, and they are laid out in the report. So again, can I thank you, Mr. Smith, for the work that you and your team have done again on this and your continued support in terms of helping us achieve our ambitions, despite the financial challenges that the UK is facing. So I'll formally move the report and the recommendations on page 164 and then go to Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Mr. Smith. I formally second the report. As Mr. Smith alluded to in item 8, you will note on the revenue part of the housing revenue account, there are some significant inflationary pressures that we've been seeing, not least increased employee costs, an increase in material costs when it comes to repairs, and also pressures related to COVID. So we've seen a huge backlog of repairs, understandably, because people during the pandemic didn't want people to come into their homes because they didn't feel safe, and that was respected and rightfully so. But that has left us with a big backlog of repairs that we are working through at the moment, and therefore has inflated our repair costs. We've increased the budget by 4.4 million, but we will look to probably increase that again to try and deal with those pressures. And so I'll also refer to the capital part of the housing revenue account. We have allocated a potential £50 million to not only to new homes, to carrying out the last remnants of the Welsh Housing Quality Standard, but also there will be significant investment, particularly in the Croft Street block of flats in high rise at the top of High Street, which will be a multi-million pound investment, and will, I'm sure, be very much welcomed by residents. We'll see some of that spend coming into this current financial year. So even though the first quarter is showing that we are only spent by 11.5%, actually towards the end of this year, we will see further investment in our council homes for the benefit of our tenants. And lastly, if I can perhaps refer to the environment at 3.2, £75,000 towards the defibrillation rollout. Monday this week saw World Restart Heart Day, where we lit the Guildhall in red, and we will be reaching 300 defibrillators across the city and county of Swansea, which will make Swansea the first UK defib friendly city. So very proud of that, and my thanks to you, Leader, for all your support with that campaign, and thanks to Heartbeat Trust UK, who've done a fantastic job, and also to our councillors who've committed their community budgets to defibrillators in their wards as well, which has enhanced that map and that rollout. So very happy to second the report. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And again, on the fact that we've become the UK's first DFIB friendly city, I think that's a great accolade to have, not because we're interested in accolades, but because it means that there will be a network of devices out there which will save lives. And that is one of the most important investments I think we could ever have made. So thank you for that. One final point from me that we have moved and seconded, but you did allude to it, Councillor Lewis, is that yes, there is a lower than expected figure on capital expenditure. That will change, as Mr. Smith said, when we come to Q2, and we will again double our efforts to make sure that the programmes that we have funded, that we have approved, are delivered on time for the people of Swansea, and that is absolutely our mission. So thank you all for that. Are there any questions or comments for myself or Councillor Lewis on this report? No, okay. Again, we'll go to the vote. So if you're in favour, please, if you could show physically. Thank you very much. That is carried. We've already dealt with item 12, so we'll go on to item 13, which is the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales annual letter. Councillor Hopkins. Sorry, Councillor Lewis. Apologies.
Thank you, Leader. The Public Service Ombudsman Wales publish an annual letter to all councils, which is on their website. This is attached to this report, Appendix A. The letter highlights activities undertaken by the Ombudsman's Office during the year and the Council's performance. The Ombudsman's Office has seen a 3% increase in requests compared to 2021-22. And the Ombudsman had launched a new service quality process to ensure the standard of service meets expectations. The second wider own initiative investigation will be looking into carers' assessments in local authorities in the coming year. In terms of the Swansea Council's performance, the Ombudsman received 94 complaints relating to the Swansea Council last year, compared with 71 the previous year. But understandably, we did see an increase in complaints following the pandemic. The complaints relate to 24% of those complaints, which equates to 23, related to housing. These are under a range of issues with no particular trends. Housing has seen an increase in complaints due to the clearing of the backlog of internal repairs that I referred to in the previous report, and the transition period to the new Oracle Field Services system. Of the 10 complaints that required intervention and reached an early resolution or voluntary settlement, these relate to 8 in corporate complaints, so 1 in the contact centre, 4 in housing repairs, 1 for RATs, 1 for council tax and 1 for housing, and the other 2 are in social services, 1 in child and family and 1 in adult services. I'd like to place on record my thanks to the complaints team and those staff who are handling the complaints within services across the council. Their hard work is greatly appreciated. I don't move the report because this report is for information only. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Any questions or comments on that report? If not, we'll move to our final item for today, which is the additional revenue provision for parking offers. In introducing this report, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 210, but I would add that we made a decision as a cabinet earlier this year to ensure that we provided parking offers in Swansea that were ones that supported a successful city centre and recognised the burden that is being placed currently nationally on families across the UK from the cost of living crisis and the mismanagement of the economy in London. Is another one of those ones where nationally they muck it up and we have to intervene locally on a greater scale to make sure that we support people. Our city centre is in a phase of regeneration and rebuilding, and we are doing, therefore, all we can to ensure that we attract new businesses to the city centre, that we support the ones that are already there, and that we reduce the costs to residents for parking in and around our city centres. But like everything, when you reduce something, there is always a cost, and this report shows that we will potentially have to provide an additional 850,000 in revenue support to our car parks in order to offset the reduced costs of that offer to residents. That is the right thing to do. but it also comes on top of the other support that we've continued to put in, including the free buses that we run across our authorities throughout the year. That, whilst it's free to the user, comes at a cost to the council. And again, you know, we will continue to provide that offer so that people can also, if they don't have a car, have the opportunity with their family to travel free across the city and into the city centre at specific times of year. So very pleased to bring this report. It does now leave us with one of the cheapest parking regimes anywhere in the UK. And also, I think we are the third cheapest nationally in terms of the current tables. But of course, they are quite fluid. But again, it means that we have done, as we said, which we continue to put investment there to support local businesses to be successful, to grow our economy, create jobs, and to give people the opportunities that they need to be successful. So with that, I'm happy to remove the recommendation on page 1, and I'll go to Councillor Stevens to second.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So it's a pleasure to second the report. And I will add, we did say back in Cabinet when we had to end the previous COVID offer that we would look to possibly introduce offers that suit the city centre and businesses in consultation with them. So, and I'm pleased to say that we have worked to get to the stage of where we are. And I just want to thank yourself as well, because the scheme was largely spearheaded by yourself, and we've been looking to provide affordable and convenient parking for the city centre, and I for one actually like the Thunderbirds references that you used online in the run up to the offer. We've had excellent feedback, as you know, and it's been welcomed by our partners such as BID, Swansea Market, and many other local businesses in the city centre. And I just want to put my thanks on record to Matt Bowyer and the whole parking services team for pulling the report together and getting us where we are at the moment. So I hope Cabinet will support the recommendations as laid out. So.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Again, thanks to yourself and the team for the work that you've done. It may seem to the public it's easy to change these structures and to just change the offers available to them, but there is a long, involved process that legally we have to go through in order to deploy that. And again, it is something that yourself and your officers have led well on, and we worked at breakneck speed to try and deploy that new help. Councillor Francis Davis.
Yeah, I think it's been really appreciated by the city centre traders that we have now what is probably the cheapest car parking of any city, especially in Wales anyway. And it is important to the revitalisation of our city centre. Swansea city centre, like every other city centre throughout the United Kingdom, has suffered by the failures in many businesses, especially after COVID. Throughout, we've seen many major national chains go through. So it's been difficult, but at least this has helped, and it has created greater footfall in the city centre since we've introduced these reduced rates. And also, I think one of the biggest problems, and I think where we help the city centre on the free bus transfer, but as you say, quite rightly, there's no such thing as free. The money's going to be picked up elsewhere. And I think since deregulation, when Margaret Thatcher deregulated the bus services, we were told we would see more buses coming along more often, but not just on major routes, but on the smaller community routes. What have we seen? The opposite of what was promised, in that now lots of our communities are being disenfranchised of a bus service. I'm not going to call it a public transport service. I always call it a private transport service. That's what it is. But whenever that happens, people look to the local authority to try and bail it out. Well, I would put quite firmly the responsibility on government to sort it out, because deregulation didn't work. People have no option but to bring cars into the city centre, because there is not an efficient transport system to bring people in. So by reducing this car parking, it has helped people get into a city centre, just get to work quite often, or get home from work, or get to university. So I think this is much needed. It is appreciated. So thank you, Leader, and Councillor Stevens, for the efforts put in.
Thank you, Councillor Francis Davis. Any other colleagues with comments or questions on this? If not, again, could I ask if you show your support for the recommendations? Okay, thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. And with that, I declare the meeting closed.